Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Trade Block, our Dynasty Discord Stages show. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined by Pat Fitzmaurice. Fitz, we are here. It is the week of the NFL season. So I don't know if we would technically call this like an off-season show or our first in-season version of the show. Obviously, we're going to go every month all year long, so it'll be, we have room for conversation for both, topics, I would say, is kind of an off-season lens to be looking through and also an in-season kind of frame of mind. This week is kind of both, right? It's always probably the single busiest week of the year working at FantasyPros because there are still drafts going on, so you have that side of things, but you also have the early, week one start-sit decisions, which are usually easier, right? It's pretty much the guys you drafted to be in your starting lineup, but there is still some of that, so it's both in the same kind of 3-day stretch here that is always makes for a lot going on.
It does. And, kind of an interesting time in Dynasty, get the lay of the land from the cliff tops before, the start of the battle and, assess value. And obviously we are just days away from those player values, changing immensely. They're going to be bad week one injuries. They're going to be surprise performances. They're going to be, dud performances. All this stuff's going to happen. And, just got to remember, our rosters are like starting hands in poker. You might start with a good hand, you might start with a bad hand, but then the board cards come and things completely changed based on that. And we're just days away from seeing the board cards.
We had a show earlier today over on Twitch where you and I did a draft with the rest of the content team folks. So there was D-Bro, there was you and me, there was Bogman, who the Dynasty listeners obviously know very well. There was Erickson, there was Kelly Kirby, there was Joe, there was Welsh. Terrell was not on the stream, but he was a part of that draft as well. So was Mike Maye. So just as a quick kind of at the top of the show here, what was your takeaway from that draft experience? Last year we did the same thing with 14 teams. This year it was just 12, but it's PPR, 3 wide receiver, 2 flexes. So receivers very important. What were your thoughts coming out of that draft?
Yeah, it was interesting to, see some of the different builds. I mean, there was an extreme 0 RB build we saw from one of our producers. And, we had one of our, John, our lead producer at the other end, was just hammering running back and wide receiver. He was not going to be cheated on value at those positions and totally punted on quarterback and tight end. So there were a lot of different strategies working. I don't think there were any major surprises the first few rounds, but things got a little quirky after the 4th round or so.
It's always really fun to do a draft like that because I've been talking about drafting with you guys for the last several months. So I know your strategies extremely well. I know the exact players that you like extremely well. And it's very, I wouldn't say it was a predictable draft for that reason, but it was a very fun draft in terms of oh, I know this guy's not going to get back to me because I know the guy picking later loves player X, Y, or Z. And so you have that kind of added wrinkle of just that level of familiarity, which makes it a lot of fun.
It does. And, so since I got graded the best draft, I'm going to blame our FantasyPros tools if I don't win the championship. Our tools suck. And
no, we would never blame the FantasyPros.
I'm
tools.
kidding.
They're the
I'm
best
kidding.
tools in the
Of
business.
not.
It was funny because one of the producers who was doing this extreme, 0 RB build at one point was well, coach is telling me to do this, which is a coach, for those who don't know, is a feature in the draft room through FantasyPros if you have a synced league, and we think it's a pretty valuable addition to the draft wizard. But he was well, if I get it wrong, then it's coach's fault. We were oh, don't blame coach here, right? This is user operator error if we make a mistake. Coach is great. So be sure to check out those tools if you do have any more drafts left. I do have a couple left, actually. Fitz, I don't know how many you have left, but I've got 1 or 2
a few more
in the next couple of days. Yeah, to bring things home. Let's dive into the Dynasty conversation here. We're going to be talking, we're going to do what we usually do, which is kind of go through the most updated version of the Dynasty Trade Value Chart. There is an update to that chart on the first of every month, all year long, no matter what. These are kind of compiled by a collective effort that Fitz is a part of. So we're going to kind of react to any kind of, big changes there, anything that stands out, maybe even not changes, just players that we feel are worth discussing that we think could change as we get into the season. That'll be about the first half hour-ish or so. Maybe at this point, we had a little bit of a long intro, maybe about the first 20, 25 minutes of the show. Then we'll answer some questions on the back end of the show from you, the audience. Those can be raising your hand to hop up on the stages. We'll also go through some of the chats being dropped in, in the chat function in Discord as well. We always start with the quarterbacks here, Fitz. Clearly in a super flex format, it's the most kind of important position to really get right. It's really, really hard to compete without that position solved. So it's one that you want to pay close attention to. There's not a ton of huge changes. There are some small changes. CJ Stroud went down a little bit. Brock Purdy went up a little bit. Bo Nix went up a little bit. I believe Bo Nix actually gained the most value of anybody. In this most recent update, Anthony Richardson continues to fall. He's down at QB 28. He dropped in value there. Daniel Jones, on the other end of that, goes up a little just because he is going to be a starting quarterback this year. That means something. Not that we're over the moon about him. And then a couple of the rookies went up as well, Jackson Dart and Cam Ward. So none of these, like I said, were major, huge, sweeping changes. But did any of those stand out to you as minor changes worth hitting on?
I mean, I think the Knicks increase in value, it just sort of matches, I don't know, what I guess I'm seeing in the market. Maybe not so much in trades, but just it seems like there's confidence in Bo Nix. Like he is weird after 1 year, sort of a made man, it seems like. And like hopefully Evan Engram helps him with, I don't know, it seems like a lot of the Broncos passing game last year was either like screens or big plays, and maybe Evan Engram gives them that sort of intermediate weapon that Bo Nix could use. But I get it. Like there's a lot of confidence in him, and I think this value increase reflects that.
I feel like I would still be more interested in some of the quarterbacks that are a little below him. It's very close, so I'm not saying that it's some huge mistake to have him there. And it is also reflective of what we've talked about a ton, which is, of course, the depth at the position. But I look, Bo Nix is 10th, highest value quarterback, technically tied for 9th with CJ Stroud. Some of the names after him, though, Brock Purdy, Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy, a little further down, Baker Mayfield, Trevor Lawrence, Cam Ward, Kyler Murray, Michael Penix, Bryce Young, Dak Prescott. I mean, that gets us down to QB 21. And every single name I just mentioned would not surprise me for them to have a better season than Bo Nix this year. I'm not saying they all will. I'm not saying Nix should be down in the 20s, but every one of those guys individually, my jaw would not be on the floor for them. I would be surprised by some of them, but I wouldn't be shocked, I guess is what I should say. And some of them I like quite a bit more. Like I really like Jordan Love. We've talked a lot. I'm very high on him this year. Debo is obviously very high on J.J. McCarthy. Caleb Williams could take a big step in year two. So does it feel right, even if we're raising Bo Nix's value, does it feel right that he's ahead of all of those different names?
Yeah, I mean, so there's not a big gap between Bo Nix and Brock Purdy, Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy. Like those guys are all really close. And I do think that's kind of a tier. And I'm sort of with you. I think I would rather personally have Purdy or Love, but, it's not, me arbitrarily setting these rankings. They're done based on the, rankings of all the FantasyPros analysts in Dynasty. Tell me, Worm, who would you rather have, Bo Nix or Caleb Williams going forward?
If you had said Love, it would have been an easy answer, Love, for me. Caleb is a less easy answer. I think you have to say Bo Nix because just like it was better. And for as much as we're excited about Caleb Williams having a huge upgrade at, the coach and play caller position for him, Bo Nix already has that. He doesn't need an upgrade because he has one of the best offensive play callers and designers of the last 25 years already as his head coach that he's now in year 2 of instead of year 1. We know that Nix can run a little bit too, which is really helpful. So I think the correct answer probably is to have Bo Nix higher. If somebody said, like, listen, I'm willing to kind of throw out year 1 for Caleb because of the coaching situation and the offensive line situation. This guy was a generational prospect, and I am like planting my flag that he is going to look like the guy we expected this year. I wouldn't argue strongly against that. And it might even be the way that I would approach building a team, more from a philosophical standpoint than from these two individual player evaluation standpoint. But I think it's proper and correct that Nix is at least ranked higher.
Yeah, I think he's safer. Caleb Williams, the issue with him is like he's such a wild stallion at quarterback who kind of like thrives on playing off script and everything. And that's not what Ben Johnson wants him to do. He wants, 3-step drop, ball is out. That's how Ben Johnson wants Caleb Williams to play. And like that seems like it could be an oil and water mix. And if Caleb can't play the Ben Johnson style, all of a sudden Caleb is at a career crossroads at a pretty early stage in his career.
It happens quick, especially for quarterbacks where there's just so much pressure to get it right. Just quickly, not any names that moved, but any names that didn't move. Who would you expect a month from now to have moved the most if in the first season of our in-season coverage?
Drake Maye. Easy.
Well, he's already pretty high. He's already QB8 in here. So do you think he gets much higher?
Well, I mean, in my rankings, he's QB6, and I think he could get up that high. Like, I think he could be like the clear QB6, although I kind of expect Patrick Mahomes to maybe have a bounce back season and sort of be the star we used to see of him. But yeah, like Maye has a really soft early season schedule, which is going to help him immensely. And like, I think the extra pass catching firepower he has now with Stephon Diggs, like that's going to be his best buddy in the passing game. Like I think Diggs is going to have a good year, and that's going to be his go-to. And when you've got Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte as your 2 and 3 receiver, better instead of your 1 and 2, that's probably a good thing.
He might not raise much in the like kind of rankings, but in terms of the value, there's a gap between the top 6 and then Justin Herbert at 7, who's really tied with Drake Maye at 8. So even if he's not maybe like jumping up multiple spots in the rankings, it'd be more like changing that gap, like he's a part of that higher tier rather than the tier he's currently sitting in.
And by the way, Ben Money here in the chat just mentioned JJ McCarthy as a guy who could certainly take a big leap right away. Like if he shows capability right away, like he is a guy who everyone could be like, yeah, I totally believe in this. Because right now that's the only thing holding his dynasty trade value down, is that we have not seen him do it at the NFL level yet. If he does it right away and proves he can do it, that value is going to soar.
By now, everybody knows that would have been Debro's pick. And also by now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract, and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Think it sounds complicated? It's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test out your general manager skills for free in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. That's promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. All right, Fitz. Let's go to the running backs here. The huge riser, to literally zero surprise to anybody listening, is Jacory Croskey-Merritt. I do want to ask, there was a depth chart that came out from the Commanders earlier this afternoon. It was very, close to when we started recording, so I don't know if you saw this or not, Fitz, but it had him as RB4 behind, it was Eckler, Jeremy McNichols, and Chris Rodriguez. So, sorry, I didn't have it up in front of me. I was trying to remember all the names. Bill being up here at RB35, tied with, in value with guys like Jordan Mason and Tyrone Tracy Jr. Are you scared off a little bit by the depth chart? Do you expect it to play out that way throughout the season? Do you expect him to rise even further if he does become the starter?
Yeah, no, the veteran deference thing is really annoying with the depth charts. Like Jeremy McNichols has been around a long time. I guess that's Todd Bowles' way of giving a hat tip to him, but like it's just silly. Obviously, he's going to have a much bigger role than Jeremy McNichols is. Right now, he might be the starting running back, but he's not going to be getting the high value touches, which are the pass receptions and the goal line carries. Eckler's going to catch most of the passes, and Chris Rodriguez is apparently going to get most of the goal line work. So yeah, I'm on one hand, this is a guy who's been like popping since OTAs in the spring, had a great training camp. Like maybe there's real sneaky star potential here for Jacory Croskey-Merritt. Well, not so sneaky because there's a boatload of hype for him, but if he's not a star, like people are going to be disappointed in the value because he's not getting those high value touches, and that's where you can score a lot of fantasy points. Like if he's just the between the 20s back, and look, it's not only like Eckler and Rodriguez cutting into his share of like the rushing attempts and yardage. It's Jaden Daniels who's going to rush for 800 to 900 yards. It's Deebo Samuel who's going to occasionally get some carries. Like it could amount to like less than we're hoping for.
I want to ask about a smaller change in terms of how much the change like affected the rankings, but a bigger change is in terms of like where the rankings are taking place. And I'm talking about inside the top 5. We previously had Saquon as RB4. He's now tied with Devon Achane, who's sitting in that 4 spot. Technically, nobody's going to argue with the first 3, Bijan, Gibbs, and Genty. Who do you have as RB4? Because like I would feel pretty uncomfortable putting Achane there, despite how good he has been when everybody's healthy, just because there are so many health-related question marks, both like from him. I know he's gonna be ready by week 1 and everything, but just him and Tua and all of that. Like I feel like I would just rather have one of these other running backs that are a few spots below him. I know you are a huge fan of Achane just as a player. Did you have him as RB4, and do you think it's right to have him kind of like tied here with Saquon, or would you consider anybody else in that RB4 spot? Which I bet if you asked 10 different fantasy analysts, you'd get 7 different answers.
Yeah, I have Omarion Hampton, number 4. So ahead of both Barkley and Achane, and I think Hampton could be a monster just from the get-go. I love that like this guy is built for war. Like he has got a body to handle heavy work, and like I guess he's been just like a monster in the weight room since he was, young, like in high school. I don't know what he squats something like 600 pounds or something, and like has all these crazy weight room numbers. Like he is great, and I mentioned this on another show today. Well, this was actually pointed out on the Athletic Football podcast. Like someone was marveling at how Omarion Hampton led the ACC in rushing the year after Drake Maye left, which was really impressive because like the overall caliber of the offense when a quarterback like Maye leaves the system is obviously going to take a big hit. Didn't slow down Hampton at all. He just continued to churn out great numbers, not only as a runner, but as a pass catcher. Like he's got a well-rounded skill set. I think he's terrific, and, it's going to be a fantastic dynasty asset for a long time.
I want to spend just a little more time on running back than we are the next positions, particularly receiver, because there wasn't as much movement there. There were some big changers at running back. Brian Robinson Jr. drops. Obviously, that's very clear what happened there. I don't think we need to really dive into it. But there was a lot of, other guys. Joe Mixon drops a lot. Again, it's clear what's happening. You could not pay me to roster Joe Mixon on any dynasty team at this point. But then the other one that I wanted to ask about is Ollie Gordon, who has been kind of a fun sleeper that there's interest in. I just kind of hit on Achane, in terms of this backfield. I hit on from the Achane side of things. But what do you make of Ollie Gordon? He's actually bumped up a lot. He's now RB51, kind of in our value, tied with 5 other guys there, so he could be as high as really RB47, and it's a jump up from about the range of about RB75. So it's a lot of value he's gained.
Yeah, Ollie Gordon is a really interesting case. Had that monstrous sophomore season at Oklahoma State with like 1,700 rushing yards and like 21 touchdown runs. Then before his junior year, I think he got a DUI in the summer, and then just like did not have a very good junior year, but decided to come out and enter the draft anyway. And in training camp in the preseason, we pretty much got the sophomore year Ollie Gordon. Like he looked like this big wrecking ball, and a style not totally unlike Omarion Hampton. So that's interesting because that's a very different style than what you get from Devon Achane, this little lightning guy. So if they go with a thunder and lightning combo, Ollie Gordon is an interesting piece of thunder there. And, I personally don't think Jalen Wright is that good. And I think maybe the Dolphins already like Ollie Gordon more than they like Jalen Wright. And then Jalen Wright is kind of hurt to boot. And now Achane has got this calf injury. So it's possible we see Ollie Gordon have a pretty substantial role right away. So, yeah, I mean, he was one of those day 3 backs, a lot of whom we had lumped together in terms of sort of could be value down in the RB 60-ish range in our Dynasty rankings and on our trade value chart. And Ollie Gordon has definitely distinguished himself from the pack.
Let's look at the wide receivers here. Not a ton of changes at the top. Drake London does move up, and he's now tied for 5th, which I'm sure I'm driven by everybody, but I'm sure Debro had a big voice in that part of the ranking shifting because he's so high on London this year. A lot of real minor changes in the top 10. Nothing major besides that. Tedero McMillan is now inside the top 12. He is a wide receiver 1 in Dynasty according to this trade value chart. He is sandwiched between Ladd McConkey and Jackson Smith and Jigba. It would not shock me if McMillan looked like the clear best Dynasty wide receiver of those 3 by this time next year, or even by this time next month. I just think there's so much of a runway, right, for him to just get so many targets early on with what we think is going to be an improved offense over the course of the season. And he's already a good player. I couldn't put him inside that top 9. That feels pretty unassailable, the top 9 names. Getting up to wide receiver 10, though, that feels really doable to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what there is to add to that. I love the guy. I think he's going to be a star from the jump.
We now have Travis Hunter, just kind of sticking with the rookies. Travis Hunter and Emeka Egbuka are tied in the trade value chart. They're wide receiver 16 and wide receiver 17. Hunter didn't move to make that happen. Egbuka jumped up. Which of those rookies would you rather have? Obviously, just as strictly as a player, we know what Travis Hunter is, but I could finally, after this show, the next time we do this, stop just guessing about what the usage is going to be, and we can actually react to what it is. I know it has kind of been leaning more and more towards the offensive side, but just given that we know it's what the role is for Egbuka, and the fact that he also, like McMillan, has this real runway of opportunity to start off the season, is there a case to be made that you'd rather have him than Hunter in a Dynasty format?
Oh yeah, there is. They're tied for 16th in the rankings in our trade value chart. I've got Egbuka wide receiver 15 and Hunter wide receiver 18. And the appeal is that we know Emeka Egbuka is going to be playing wide receiver for the duration of his NFL career. Whereas Travis Hunter, that has been my fear all along, that we don't know what exactly his offensive and defensive usage is going to be. And it's always possible. It's not static. That's the thing, that the Jaguars can always turn the dials on this and, move his offensive usage up or down, or his defensive usage up or down. And it's not like the Jaguars have a great group of cornerbacks right now. So I'm a little worried about that.
Some other names that moved up in the latest edition of the value chart: Ricky Pearsall, Jameson Williams, George Pickens. Matthew Golden is now inside the top 30. I agree with that. I have liked him more and more as the summer has gone along. Calvin Ridley, obviously, usually you expect the guys who are younger to take big steps forward, but just the situation improving for him. It's not like he's crazy old yet or anything. He moves up a bit, still in the wide receiver 41, so not like he's super high. Some guys who have kind of changed in our estimation amongst the rookies that are further down. Jack Besh drops a bit. He's at wide receiver 56 now. And Isaac TeSlaa goes up a bit. He's now up to wide receiver 60. So those guys are a lot closer than they were. I liked Besh a lot during kind of rookie draft season in May. At this point, though, TeSlaa's been really impressive this summer.
He has been. I think I'm not sure. Did he lead the NFL in preseason receiving yardage? I'm not sure about that, but I'm pretty sure his 3 touchdown catches in the preseason led the NFL. And granted that the Lions did get an extra game because they had the Hall of Fame game, but some of his catches were highlight reel stuff. So I questioned that trade when it was made. Basically, they traded a 3rd round pick to move up in the 3rd round, but they traded 2 future thirds. And I don't know, every time I think Brad Holmes makes like a bad move in the draft, like it turns out working out for him. So like he's a pretty shrewd guy, and it looks like he's found a gem possibly in TeSlaa.
Let's go to the tight ends here to wrap things up. No change for Brock Bowers, no change for Trey McBride. We have a pretty big jump for Tyler Warren, who is now tight end 3, which is like not like he had been kind of tied at the hip of Colston Loveland, right? And maybe early on we preferred Loveland, and then maybe like based on some of the early usage and just what we're anticipating from the offensive this year, we start to like Warren a bit more. But there's now, not that it's some massive gap, but there is now a gap between the two. And in fact, Sam Laporta sits in between them. Tyler Warren essentially tied with Laporta, just a little bit ahead of Loveland. So is that something that was driven by you as a part of this rankings process? Was it other folks? I'm curious where you stand. I know you like Warren better, especially for this year, but I'm curious where you stand on seeing an actual gap between the two.
I mean, I think it was unanimous. Like, I know Andrew Erickson is a huge Tyler Warren fan too, and it's just the fact that we saw him like, well, in addition to like this excellent training camp he had, playing basically every snap with the starters in the preseason and not really coming off the field. Like, that bodes really well for his usage. I think he gets an additional bump probably with Daniel Jones winning the starting job instead of Anthony Richardson. You know, I think that means more completions per game for the Colts passing attack, and just all systems go for this guy. Like, he does seem like he might be another George Kittle.
It's hard to see what the case would be against him, right? Like obviously nobody's touching, at least at this point in time, those top 2 tight ends in our dynasty rankings. Like I would be totally fine with somebody saying like, listen, Sam Laporta has a tight end 1 season under his belt. We're not going to overreact to a down second year. Like, he deserves to be ahead of this rookie at a position where rookies more recently they do, but historically don't perform early. But if you want to put him ahead of Laporta, I totally get it. Like, it just feels very like a very fun and exciting time to be invested as heavily as you can be in Tyler Warren.
Agreed. Completely.
Tucker Kraft is another guy who moved up a lot. And those are basically my 2 favorite redraft tight end sleepers this year are Kraft and Warren if I don't get one of the big 3. So it feels somewhat fitting that they're also kind of rising in the dynasty value. He's up to tight end 7. When you look at Tucker Kraft, like, you're obviously a Packers fan, so you know the team really well. Do you think the usage really will get to the point it needs to be? Because we always talk about the key to a successful fantasy tight end, and Andrew Cooper talks about this a lot, friend of the show, how you need to have a very reasonable, clear path to being a top 2 target on your offense. Do you see that happening for Kraft? Because like on the one hand, I feel like you could make that case because there's not all these obvious pass catchers ahead of him. On the other hand, it's been such a spread the ball around type of offense, and they do now have this first round wide receiver. Like, if they are going to have an alpha, theoretically it could be him instead. That I just worry about Kraft. Like, I think Kraft's always going to be really efficient. I think he's going to be one of my favorite tight ends in the league in a vacuum. But for fantasy, what do you think about the usage for him to be as highly ranked as he now is in our trade value chart?
I do think he has that Andrew Cooper path to being the number 2 target on his team, because I don't know if there's anyone on the Packers who is guaranteed to get 100 targets this year. Like, it could be a true ensemble cast. Like, great reports on Golden from training camp in the preseason. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens when the curtain goes up. I think Dobbs has shown that he's ideally a wide receiver 3 type. Who knows if Dontavian Wicks will ever get over some of his, hands issues. And like Jaden Reed trying to play this season with a Jones fracture in his foot, that seems like it could be fraught with peril. So, Kraft could maybe being the top target isn't entirely out of the question.
The only other tight end that I wanted to just briefly hit on, again, there's a lot of minor movements, and everybody should go check this out at FantasyPros.com. You can also just Google FantasyPros Dynasty Trade Value Chart. It's the September update. But the other one that I wanted to hit on is Isaiah Likely. He goes down a little in value. I actually think that's a mistake. He's still inside the top 15 at the position, but this injury that he had is not like a long-term one. And I'm still really confident that he's going to be a starter next year, without this Mark Andrews competition. And it wouldn't shock me if by November of this year, assuming that he does come back from the foot injury healthy, if he takes over the role this year. Like, I'm really high on Isaiah Likely. Obviously, he's younger than Andrews, and I don't think they're going to extend both of them with their contracts up this year. So that feels like a little bit of an overreaction to me in terms of, the foot injury this August. I don't think that's a long-term one. And I think there's a very real chance that by the end of December, or let's say by the end of March, when we see kind of how the chess pieces fall in terms of who signs with what team, that he is a clear-cut top 10 tight end in Dynasty, and maybe even higher than that.
Yeah, I mean, we still like him long-term, and he's a guy I would expect to be higher in our Dynasty rankings and on this trade value chart a year from now. But, the fact that he's going into the season banged up a little, I mean, it does kind of put a dent in his value for 2025. So I understand the drop-off, but I tend to agree with you. Like, we know it's, from this point, it's way more likely to go up than down as far as his value.
I mean, he's either tied with or behind guys like Elijah Arroyo and Mason Taylor. I'm not sure how much 2025 value those guys are adding either. So, just as like non-elite rookie tight ends. So like if he's bumping down, I would just rather have him than those guys, because we've seen what he can do with the ball in his hands at the NFL level when he's on the field. But it's not like he cratered. He just dropped a little. I want to let everybody know that they can evaluate trades with confidence using FantasyPros Trade Analyzer, instantly see the impact of trades on your team, and get expert recommendations whether you're making a 2-for-1 deal or swapping a couple draft picks for that stud who will help you win now. The Trade Analyzer will help you optimize your roster and make smarter decisions. Try the Trade Analyzer today at fantasypros.com/myplaybook and dominate your league. We'll wrap up there. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into this and all of our episodes. Like I said, we're not going anywhere. This monthly show will still be around in season as well, so we'll be back in October. And I already read the other schedule stuff we got going on. So for Fitz, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.